What's up everyone and welcome to this video. Today we're going to be going over some game settings, some hotkeys, and some other little tips or tricks that I can give you for Age of Empires 3. So if you're just beginning, there's a lot of information in this video that is going to be useful to you. And even if you've been playing for quite a while, I got a couple little things that I'm sure you don't know. Many people don't know. Maybe you do, but I think a lot of people will find out some new information here. So just to get started, we're going to go straight to, this is the options menu here. We're going to go into our options and we're going to go through everything in here that's impactful in any way that might make the game easier or for you to play, or just make things a little bit smoother. So obviously if you have a lower end computer, you're not going to want to have the maximum settings. So in the graphics options, you want to lower everything down as much as you can, and you'll even see some top players that bring their settings down, even if they have a good computer, because if you're like 100% hardcore focused on winning and getting better and microing as best as possible, there's some little things on the ground that are just visual cosmetic things that can make it a little bit difficult to understand what a unit is doing, what a unit looks, what type of unit it is, or other things like that. So you might see players like Julian have very low settings. I don't know if that's because of his computer, but I can guarantee you there's a long history of players in Age of Empires 3 that put minimum settings so that it runs as smooth as possible. So in here, you're obviously going to want to bring these settings down depending on, these are all a lot of preferences. So I have higher settings because I like the way the game looks. It looks really, really nice when you can max out the settings, and obviously for videos it's a little bit better. So a lot of this is going to be a preference, but like I said, if you want to have the smoothest gameplay, you're going to bring it down. It's going to look a lot worse if you do reduce these settings to minimum, so we won't do that, but that's up to you. So let's move on to game options. There's a lot in here that's impactful for the game. So I don't know if this is still on by default, but this enable right click camera drag, that can cause a lot of issues if you don't even know you have that on. Sometimes you don't even know, because you can right click and you're trying to move your mouse and select another unit immediately. So we can go ahead and set this on. I can show you what this does. Some people probably know. So I right click and I drag, right? So that's what that's all about. But if I'm telling my units to go here and I accidentally right click and drag instead of just right clicking, it can cause, you're not giving the command anymore. So that, I think, if that's still on by default, that would be very, very bad, I think, for new players. So I turn that off unless I'm doing some casting, and a lot of times I'll even forget to turn that back on. But for casting or observing games, it's really nice, and that makes the camera go smooth. But otherwise, for gameplay, I definitely would turn that off. Camera rotation, it can be useful if you're trying to look around like an edge or some trees or whatever, just getting a better visual of a certain position. I keep that on, and that's pretty simple. You just hold down shift and rotate the mouse wheel. So I know there are some players that like to do that when they start the game as well, just so they have the opponent facing upwards. But that's, again, a preference. Camera acceleration, I would definitely put this one on the minimum. So you don't, if you're trying to move the screen quickly, you want it to be moving as fast as possible right off the bat. You don't want a little bit of time there for it to speed up to the maximum speed, which is your scroll speed here, and I like to keep that. It's pretty fast if you go higher. Some players are really insane and put that up quite high. I like it to be right around 50%. Camera shake, again, that we're going to go back up a little. That is preference. I think it's a little bit distracting. I don't think it's the nicest addition either. I think it's a little bit funky, but that's preference again. So easy military drag, this is a big one, and I like to keep that on, so I don't select my villagers when I do this. But here is one of the little tricks I'm going to give you right now. If you have easy military drag on, and say you're getting pushed in this position, you do want to move everything, you're going to hold down Alt and then drag, and that will select the villagers. So that bypasses the easy military drag temporarily. So now I go back. I don't have to press anything. It's just when I hold Alt and drag box, that will select all units. So I don't know if that's inverted if you have it off. We can test this right now, actually. We'll take that off. So by default now, it'll select everything. Now if I hold Alt, oh, it alternates. Okay, so now I didn't know that. I didn't even know that. Look at that. We're all learning something here. So if you took, wow, they just went straight through that mine, didn't they? So if you don't have easy military drag on by default, you can temporarily turn it on by holding Alt and then selecting. So that is nice to know that. That's gonna put that back on by default, and we'll keep moving on. Economy gather point only. That is talking about your town center or whatever military building you have shipments coming in, or creating villagers. I keep this off so that the rally point is affected for both. See the two flags there? Sometimes you don't notice, but there's two flags, one military and one economy. So that is to keep that both on the same right click. Otherwise, you would have to click a specific button on the UI to affect the economic gather point. Computer players to chat, whatever. That's not really useful. Not impactful, I guess. Just clamp mouse to window. Obviously, if you have two monitors like I do, you want to clamp your mouse to the window if you ever have that bugging out. Well, even if you have this on, sometimes it bugs out, and I just quickly hit Alt Tab, and it comes back and locks on the screen. And other things here are just preference things, not game impactful. Let's go on to the UI. This is preference on the size of the UI that you want up here. But down here, you definitely want a lot of these settings on. The game time, you want that on. Score as well, it'll help out. You want to show hit points. This, I currently have it on holding down Alt to show hit points. You can have it on rollover. I guess in this game there is not a always on option. I thought there potentially was. Maybe we'll see it lower in this menu. Showing the unit queue, you want that on. So rollover is when you're just hovering over a unit. It'll show the HP if you do that. So some people would want that on as well. Resource gathered per minute. I don't like the way it looks, but it could be useful at times just to show how much of each resource you're gathering per minute. Show resource gauge on harvest. That's another one that you'll be able to see. Just visually, I'm not a huge fan of it. I like, this game is so beautiful, so I like to just make it look as nice as possible when I'm playing, basically. So that resource bar, you see it now on the tree there, and on the mine, on the food. So that is what that is referring to. Let's go back to the UI. Show resource gauge on harvest. Okay, show advanced resource. I actually don't know what this is referring to. Well, we can take that off and take a look. See if I notice a difference here. I'm not too familiar with what that is. Oh, it looks like something's missing here. Oh, I think that's just the villagers per resource. Yeah, I don't see anything there now. Let's go back. It's an interesting way that they word it. Advanced resource. I believe that's going to show, yeah, villagers per resource. So definitely want that on. The next one is advanced formations. Excuse me, that is for your military, I believe. Yep, you're going to want that on. Advanced tech displays additional options and stats for improvements. You want that on. Visual control groups, that is good to have. It'll be at the top of the screen. You don't need that on. I mean, you probably know which control groups you're using, but if you make a mistake and it goes into the wrong one, you can see that very quickly. Transparent effect on age up menu. So somebody was asking me about this in a recent video. That is referring to this. You have the it used to be a mod back in the day. I think A's made it, but now you can have it on by default. I only learned that within the last year, but I think it's been around for longer than that. So that is this one right here. Turn on mini home city deck. I love this one. I can't believe that people are playing. I mean, I guess that could be preference too. Like if you want to see the home city, you know, you go here and then this is where you select your deck. I haven't been on that screen in a very long time. So when you do have that on, it's going to be a small screen like such where it pops up here and you pick your deck. So that's pretty useful. You can see what's going on the map while that's happening. So I definitely like that. That's a really good addition to DE that the Legacy game did not have. And what else? Threshold snapped unit. This is again about having as quick as possible when you're using your find unit hotkeys or control groups. Double tap. You want that on the minimum setting. Display hotkey commands. That's nice to have just to see what any unit, tech, or stance the hotkey is for those, in case you don't know it by heart or memorized. Hotkeys snap to unit. So this is a find unit hotkey when you're. I don't want that on, so I actually have that off so I can find. Say I'm in a battle and I want to quickly get a full batch of cavalry or whatever. I'll go to my market, which is not the greatest hotkey. It's Control M for me, and I'll go there, sell some resources, and buy what I need to finish a batch. But I don't want to leave the screen off of the fight, so that is something that I don't want to snap to unit. Invert control shift, that's preference. I keep that off. Wonder power shows on the UI. Definitely want that on if you're playing an Asian Civ. Tracking challenges, I don't think. I guess it's probably just for scenarios or single player. And what else do we have here? Friend flow colors. That's one that some people would like to have on. Unit type. I think that's a good one you want on as well. And this is your ranged indicator. So I have it showing. It's like a opaque circle around units. You'll see it. I can show you in just a second. This is when I have it on for just when you're holding the Alt key. You can have it on unit select or unit hover. So I'll show you that right now. So it's not on. You're not seeing their range, but when I hold down Alt, you can see this pale circle here, which is showing their range, and this is the line of sight of the scout. So that's why it was double circle, and that's the musketeer. So you can have that on by default when you select your units. I thought about putting that on at all times or when selecting, but again, visually, it's just a thing for me. I like how beautiful this game is, so I try to keep the computer aspects minimal as possible. Okay, game world tooltips, definitely want that on. Then you want a short delay for them to pop up. You want to see that as quickly as possible. And tooltip background opacity, I have that at maximum. You can see if I hover here, they are a little bit harder to read, so I keep that at max. Next, this is UI options. We can just discard that. Sound options, I just basically turn my music a little bit lower so it's not as distracting, and then adjust. I think this is system dependent, so you'll have to try to figure these things out for yourself there. And then hotkeys. Hotkeys are very extensive for me. I have a hotkey for almost everything. I use the Legacy here, and I'm not going to go through everything here because there's so many hotkeys, especially for Civ specific buildings and units and all that. So I'm just going to give a little bit of an overview of my general setup. So town center, I have a space bar to find the town center, and that is easy for me to jump around if I have multiple town centers. Queue up villagers, which I have as Q, close to the number 1, which is also the control group that I use for my town center. I think it won't show control groups when I... Oh no, it's already set, yeah. These are your control groups up here. Villagers, I put on Q. I try to put... So I actually have like really old hotkeys set up, which you can see down here, all the letters in the corners here, which is one of the options we went over. And I kind of have the same settings from like Age of Mythology way back in the day. They're not super efficient, but I just memorized them. When I played Age of Empires 4, I did use like the QWER and the ASDF hotkeys, which are a little bit easier to use. So it's, again, preference in this situation. But I like to have the house, which is a common hotkey, pretty close to the top left corner of your keyboard. I have it at E. Q would be great as well. Basically the ones that you're going to use the most: building a villager, building a house, and then I use almost all these hotkeys every single time I make one of these buildings, because sometimes I'll go and I don't have a hotkey right now for livestock pen, so I'll take some time. It'll be tough for me to find where the building is because I use hotkeys almost every single time I place a building. In the barracks, I try to make the first option A, kind of going with that ASDF, and keep, since the units move around a little bit depending on your civ, I try to keep musketeer type units at D, skirmishers at R, and then similar thing with the stable. I'll put the hussar type unit at Q or A, and goons at S typically. So just keeping everything close to that top left side of the keyboard, I think, is ideal, because you're going to be using your control groups as well, hopefully. And then we go to unit stances. I like to keep Q for the ranged mode, and S, I use the melee mode all the time. Defend mode is something I use as well for cavalry, putting them in groups, and we can, well, you know what? Let's go ahead and show that, because that is a nice little. Oh, we need to. What is it again? Speed always wins. So we'll just get a stable real quick. I hope my opponent doesn't come and kill me. All right, so we're gonna put that back on. I remembered I copied and pasted it. So D is defend mode, which puts your units a little bit tighter grouped. I don't know why it doesn't apply. I guess it's unit type specific. I'll have to go in there and actually adjust that so I can easily do that for my infantry. But it's very easy to switch back and forth, very smooth. And then Z for spreading out units. And this is one of the things I love most about the game, is just the micro that you're able to do, and how quickly and responsive it is. You gotta be careful though. Sometimes it does bug out, so you gotta watch that. But we can go ahead and pause there. And what else do we have here? I made a little list. So I showed. Oh, there's another nice tip here that I have not discussed yet. And to show this, I'm going to separate my villagers quite a bit. And we have an idle one here. So one of my favorite tricks that this game has, and has always had, is alt double clicking. So if you want to move your villagers, right? If you want to select them all, you would double click or drag box. Or if you have easy military drag on, you would alt and drag box. But you can do it even more efficiently. So if you have villagers that you only want to select off the mine, you would hold hold control and double click. That will select all villagers doing the current same task. So I want to select the berry villagers. I hold control and double click. These villagers are going to wood, but even if they were, well, I can show this right now. If these vills were on wood already, and these guys were tasked to go there, in this case, right now there's only 2 on wood. So I control and double click on the wood villagers, and it will just select these 2. So you can. This is very useful when I am running villagers away from a raid. If they're currently running, you can do that, and you can control and double click a running villager, and it will only select the ones that are currently in motion to do another task. So that is one of my favorite hotkeys that I think a lot of people don't know about. So there's another new one for you. And we already covered the alt and drag box. Control groups. Let's go over control groups real quick, because they are super impactful on gameplay. And a lot of people have been asking me about what my control groups are, what my hotkeys are. So we kind of covered the hotkeys there. Don't want to get into it too much, because there's so many different ones for each civ. But in the general idea, I kind of went over it. A for hand cavalry, S for ranged cav, and then I don't even think I changed the cur hotkey there. It's D by default, I think. So control groups, I like to use 1 for my town center. That way I'm always aware. I'm always circling back to my main base and managing my economy. I think that's the biggest thing for me, is just I've always wanted to just have a good eye on my eco and not let it, because I'll see a lot of players, even top players, that don't have it in a control group, and they'll like misclick, or maybe a hunt runs out, and then they'll have they keep making villagers, but they'll have 3 sometimes idle, standing in a spot just not doing anything. And so I like to always snap back there, check my eco, and make sure everything's managed properly. So I keep that in 1 all game. Not a very common thing, I don't think. I think a lot of people use the first 1, 2, or 3 for military, because micro is important, but I think macro is, it's like a pet peeve of mine. I hate idle villager time, so I keep my TC on 1. I put my military buildings in a group, and I'll put them in 2, and you can cycle through these with the tab button, which is something I use very, very often. So that's very useful. And then this game's actually, it improves, because in Legacy you weren't able to do this, but while you're on stable, you can hit A and it will start producing a husk. You can hit tab, hit D, and it will start producing a musket. So based on which one, it'll recognize that you're selecting which one and where you want to make the units at that time. So very nice little thing there. There's that idle villager I was talking about. Let's go ahead and pause. And then I also like to use musketeers or my ranged units in control group 3. That'll change throughout the game because depending on the composition that I run with, I'll put cavalry typically at 5, and my anti-cav will be at, let's go ahead and make some crossbows so I can show this, put this on display, but I'll put, while I don't have any other ranged units, I'll keep musketeers on 3, cav on 5, and if I want to split a group up, I'll put some more on 4. So then that's pretty much as far as I go in terms of hotkeys. Or not hotkeys, in terms of control groups. But there, like I said, it is, and there's so many different unit types in this game, you have to have a little bit of flexibility. So in this case, when I have like a skirmisher or crossbow type unit, I will put them at 3. They're my main ranged group. And then the anti-cav, whether that's dragoons or musketeers, will be on 4. And then my cavalry will be on 5. So I try to keep 3. Over that is a little bit difficult. Like, I mean, you can try that, but try to get 4 or 5 military unit types in your control groups. But I feel like sometimes at a certain point it's counterproductive. So you don't want to try to overdo it, especially if you're starting out new. You don't even need to have 2 different infantry control groups. Just put them in 1. Put them in 3 together. Put your cav in 4. Just starting out. You don't want to overdo it. You want to just try to focus on the basics, not just make yourself go crazy trying to be too perfect. So another thing that I just realized I missed a little bit is when you do have your control groups, and these were part of the settings, but if I double tap 1, it'll take me back to my town center. So if you double tap the button that you selected as your control group number, it'll take you back. So I have my military buildings at 2. I'll double tap that. I have my infantry as 3. Double tap that. It brings me back to them. Cavalry. And it centers the screen on them. Okay. So that's a very useful tool to have. And very important to use. What else? I felt like there was something else that I was forgetting. But I think that's kind of it. So are there any, if there's any questions, leave a comment in the comment section of this video. If there's any other information you guys want to know, just let me know. I really urge you to try to use, the most important thing in my opinion is control groups. Try to manage a few different types of units at the same time. I also suggest putting at least villagers and houses in a hotkey just to start out. It's something that you have to take time and get used to it, but as you continue to do it, it'll be just muscle memory. You don't even have to think about it. You'll be that much faster. So little by little, try to introduce this into your gameplay and try to like plan out what's a good setup, and then just stick with it. Because if you're switching, and I have switched over the years, it's very difficult to go from one setup to another and not like slow down. It does take quite a bit of time to get back up to speed. So pick a sensible, like a setup that has a logic behind it. Mostly trying to stay around that top side of the keyboard, QWERASDF, top left side of the keyboard, and you'll be good. So I did just remember one last thing, but I forgot it again. I just remembered. So one of my most important hotkeys, is actually kind of funny that I kept forgetting, but is the side mouse buttons. On my mouse, I have 2 side buttons, and I use one of them for idle villagers because, again, I hate having idle villagers, and it's super, super important to have a good, easy to access hotkey for idle villagers. So one of those buttons is for idle vills, which also, of course, will find fishing boats and any other economic units. The other button I have on the side of my mouse that I use is for finding explorer. So I like to have my scouting unit pretty much available very easily. If I have to build a trade post, find my explorer to build a town center, things like that, or just to go through the enemy base and get some information. So I have both my hotkeys as idle villager and find explorer. So those are things that I utilize quite often. So definitely use those buttons if you have them on your mouse. I think I covered everything there. Settings, we talked about control groups, we talked about hotkeys, and yeah, I mean, this is a good way to improve. If you do really enjoy this game and you want to get better at it, these are the steps you have to take. But don't overdo it. You still want to have fun, and you don't want to get too frustrated. It can be quite frustrating learning the hotkeys. I'm telling you, just stick with it. It'll pay off in the long run, and it won't be too long in the future until you're super happy that you put in the effort and learn these mechanics, and you're going to be in great shape. So, I just remembered one thing. One of my most used hotkeys is the eject from the town center hotkey, and I'll just put this in display real quick. So I have one-click garrison on, hit A, the eject, and boom, they pop out the other side. Same thing here. You save some walking time. That is one of the most used hotkeys, I think, for any top player, especially at the start of the game and distributing villagers. So, all right, guys, I think we covered everything. I hope you enjoyed this little tutorial. Hope there's a lot of information that you got from it. And if you're an experienced player, I hope there's a few things that you learned as well, such as the alt drag box, the alt double click, I keep calling it the alt double click. The drag box is alt. The double click is control. So see, this is what I mean when it's just going to be muscle memory. I can't even so many hotkeys that I have that I don't even really recall. When somebody asks me about it, it's just I have to put my hand on the keyboard and blindly do it, and then I'll have to look down the next time, and then I can tell you what it was. So it just becomes muscle memory, and it just builds your assets, your strengths of your RTS gaming, and it'll help hopefully improve your skill and the fun you have playing. So hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.